culture is always going to be the piece that people are going to rely on when they're trying to compare opportunities, when they decide whether or not they feel valued, whether it's a place that they want to emulate. So many times we're like, okay, I need somebody to help me with my strategy or my sales or my social media. And all of that is great. I have the same. But we don't always invest in ourselves and what we need to be able to see our business more clearly on the people side. Culture always comes down to the piece where people decide if they want to go or whether they stay. You are always going to have challenges in business, right? But when your people rise, so do you. So does your business.
So today I'm thrilled to have Susan Mahaffee on the show, and you are the CEO and founder of PeopleRise. And today we're talking all about a topic everybody loves to talk about, HR. Yay! But we're going to make it very fun because I will say I was just at a presentation that Susan gave, and it was very eye-opening for all the things that I didn't know that I was like, wow. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kara. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so many of our listeners are either solopreneurs, some may have teams, small teams wanting to grow, and I think that sometimes when we think about a CPA, we think about a bookkeeper, but HR is often left out of the conversation. And so what do you, if somebody was listening and was like, well, why do I need HR? I can go on ChatGPT and create a handbook. What would be your response to that? Or where have you maybe seen business owners that have had that approach and you'd have to come in and kind of, navigate them out of it? So.
Oh, yes. That is a very real reality. Yeah, thanks, Kara, for the question. So I think there's a couple things, right? The first one is that when business owners start, and I am a business owner now too, so I totally understand this, firsthand, is that you're usually trying to prioritize, okay, what are the most significant things I need to get up and running, right? So it's a concept of your business, you're trying to set up, your LLC, let's say, you work with an accountant, you get all of the kind of foundational things that you think you need. And when you're just one person, that is fine. And then if you are lucky enough to expand your business, if that's also part of your goals, and you start to hire contractors, maybe you're going to start to hire employees, maybe you're not sure if you need to hire an employee or a contractor. There's a lot of different things that come into play as to which is the right fit for your business and the type of work that you have and how do you support your clients and customers. And so what I like to say to folks is, when you're starting off, the same way you don't know everything, it's great to get somebody else who's an expert. And so a lot of friends have always reached out to me before I started PeopleRise just to say, can you look at my resume? Could you help me negotiate my salary? Or I've had this difficult situation at work. And so similarly now with PeopleRise, that's what we do. When you're starting a business and you're looking to figure out what to do in the people space, that's where we come in. And so when you first start your organization, you're setting all those things up. And if you're going into the space where now people are an element, that's where I say, let's have a conversation. Usually what I do is, we sit down and we just talk briefly, usually for like a 30-minute consultation. Where are you in your business? What are you focused on? What are your goals? What do you anticipate in the next year? And that'll really help us understand, where to get you started. What I like to say to business owners is that as with anything, you don't want to do something more than once and rework it all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So we'd rather get good information, start with the right basis, and then grow from there. So I say, don't do the DIY chaos. Don't ChatGPT it. People do it all the time. Mm-hmm. People inherently know, I need to have a couple of key documents, or I need a handbook, or what have you. And so that's where I say, talk to somebody who's an expert in that area. You may not need a ton, but the things you do get from the beginning and the get-go will serve you really well. You wouldn't start your business and not do your taxes the right way. You're going to go and work with someone else. So that's also where we come in on the people side.
Yeah. And I love the name, actually, PeopleRise. Can you just talk about how did you kind of come up with that? I love that.
Yeah, so the whole concept of PeopleRise were two things. One is I use the term HR because that's what most people know, right? If I say HR, I work in HR, you're like, oh, okay, sure, cool, I get that. However, HR is going through a huge shift these days. I would say that many of us have, and even others, when you say that you work in HR, people usually are kind of like, oh gosh.
Nobody wants to talk to HR.
Nobody wants to talk to HR because, right? Because it's usually indicative of I did something wrong,
Right.
I'm in trouble, I'm going to get fired, something negative.
Yeah.
And I lived that world myself when I was HR in different organizations. When I did show up, especially because I did a number of roles where I was had a big geography to take care of. When I came into town, that's usually what was happening. And so instead of using HR in the name, people is really what I think it's about. It's not people as being resources, right? And, it used to be personnel, then it became HR, human resources, and now we're seeing people operations kind of being the new wave. So you might be seeing that.
Oh, interesting.
So people say they work in people operations. When I worked at Mars, we were people and organization, P&O. And one of the things I loved about it when I went to work there was I was like, oh, wow, I won't be called HR. And it's what a difference. And so people is, of course, part of it because that's what we do. I want the name to be symbolic of, exactly what do we do. And then Rise comes from the concept. So I'm a big fan of Maya Angelou, and, and Still I Rise was something that was very evident for me. That poem for me was really something that kind of describes my own resilience and challenges and opportunities to kind of make things better from difficult moments and difficult times. And so that's how I see the workplace and also how I see leadership. And so I want to make people better. So when I would say that when I would work with you, let's say I was your HR business partner, I would say that, I'm here to make you and your team better. I'm here to help people rise up, make things better than they were before. And so the whole concept behind PeopleRise was to kind of indicate that you are always going to have challenges in business, right? But when your people rise, so do you. So does your business. And I think rising also is something where people can get the concept of going up, improving, making things better. And so, I wanted it to be something that was inspirational and something that really helped people understand about rising to the occasion as well. And that's what I think leadership is about.
I love that. I think that you can definitely feel that resonance in the name. Awesome. And kind of how I even was just picturing as you were speaking too, is that kind of helping people expand into the next, expand into who they're being called to be in leadership.
Absolutely. People have so much inside of them that they can offer. And I think that's what we can do best, right? Real HR folks, right? We're not just policy. You heard me talk about it the other day. It's not about paperwork. It's not about policies. It's not about disciplining people, right? If we're doing what we do best, we're bringing people together. We're helping to coach. We're helping people to broaden their perspectives, and we're helping people be better, right? That's our gift. That's what we should be bringing to the table. And that's essentially what I try to do with businesses at any stage.
Yeah. So talk us through that, because you were talking about there's the 3 different phases that you offer support. And if somebody's, for example, in the solopreneur role right now, but is about to hire a team, is about to hire a contractor or an employee,
yes,
I guess they would be at that foundational level. So what kind of things do you help them think through at that level of leadership?
Yeah. So what we decided to do, so PeopleRise, we're turning 3 tomorrow.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you. It's kind of surreal to also think 3 years seem to go by really fast. But on the other hand, I think 3 years is probably one of the life cycles many business owners can probably relate to, because you kind of go through this, it's kind of like what they say in plants, like, you plant them and they sleep, weep, creep, something like this.
Oh, no. I'm not a gardener, but I haven't heard that before. But.
Well, what the idea is, you buy something at the garden store and it looks beautiful. And then when you plant it, it might look really sad, right? But then it has to go through through a season and then it'll come back better and it'll grow. And so,
Got it.
you don't just buy something at the store, put it in your ground, and it's just going to look amazing forever, right? We do have to cultivate it, nurture it, water it, give it sunlight and all that kind of stuff. So I am trying to be a gardener. So that's, I think, where that comes in.
I love it.
So similar in I think a lot of things are in threes for me, right? And just like in your business journey. And so when you are a solopreneur, you probably are just trying to make it. You're trying to figure it out. You're trying to prove your concept. And so, you're just kind of, thinking things through. Along the way, you probably have your eye on other things in the world, right? You're probably looking at what is inflation like? What are wages like? What are benefits, et cetera? We're all faced with these things just given the normal course of life, business. And if you're a good business owner, you're aware of these topics, right? So what I would say to someone at that point, if you're a solopreneur, what my suggestion to you is get on our email list. Just be someone who is getting information that might seem interesting, reading an article on leadership, reading an article about something that's going on that may or may not affect your business that relates to compliance or otherwise. You just never know sometimes how something you might come across like, oh, wow, I was just looking at that or whatever. So I say to folks, it's never too early to engage, even if you don't think you need us, because we also want to build a rapport with you. We want you to think of us when you're like, oh, I need to hire someone. We want to be the ones that you instantly think of, right? And I think the best way to do that is to, as you also heard me say, put marbles in the jar. So every time that you see something that we're doing or something where we're working on, I hope to build trust with other business owners to say, oh, that aligns with how I want to run my business or how I want to treat my employees or the things I want them to have when they come work for me. And so then when we go into kind of that next, I'll call it foundational step, where maybe you are getting ready to hire people, you are looking to maybe even contractors, usually that's where we engage with you and we kind of do what we call the business startup. And this is about getting you the essential things that you need in your business to have those people work for you and do it in a way that is, yes, legally compliant, but also gets you started off on the right foot. You don't want to give somebody a document that looks messy, right? You don't want to give somebody an offer letter that doesn't include all the right things. You don't want to chat GPT it. Yes, you'll probably get something decent, but what you don't know, you don't know. And more times than not, what will happen is even the most simple misunderstanding can cause issues. And so I say, invest, a little bit of time, energy, and money at the front end. Get those good tools, like some offer letters. Understanding in Maryland, for example, you have to have sick and safe leave. People don't understand the way that works. It may seem simple in writing, but you have to choose, okay, which way is how my company is going to apply it? And then who does it go towards, who's applicable for it and eligible. So those are the things that we can help you with. And a lot of times people have remote teams, people who work all different places. There's different rules state by state. When they have to get paid if they leave you, or are they entitled to certain benefits. So without getting more technical, the idea here is trying to inform you and give you the essential tools so that when you go and you bring someone on your team, you look buttoned up, you look confident, you feel confident, and you have just the basic essentials so that as you grow, hopefully you can do so in a way that feels very smooth. You don't want to have to rework things, and I talk about the rework tax all the time. Having to go back and do something different or fix it with people can also make you feel like, I might be really great at my business and what I do, but then my people stuff is messy. Those two things really need to be in alignment. So when we have businesses that are starting to grow and have, a handful of folks, and they're starting to, maybe a lot of seasonal work is also something big we're seeing right now. People are hiring folks to work in different periods of time, a lot of summer camp programs, other school things. I mean, there's just a lot of fractional work happening right now. And so that means people are also working a number of different jobs. Whereas in the past, I think we were all kind of used to this model. You had one full-time job, that's what you did, and that was it. Not anymore, right? Gig economy and otherwise. So we're seeing a lot of people do part-time and fractional work. And so you might have a lot more people into that system. So we're probably talking to you about how do you put things in a system that actually is like a platform where you can keep all of your data secure, because you have a responsibility for that. And we're probably talking about what kind of trainings do you need to give other folks on your team, how to make new leaders, feel prepared. And then with our growth partners, those are clients who are probably at a stage where they might be more mature. They might be focused on something more customized. They might need to talk more frequently, maybe at least once a month, to kind of talk through their strategy, succession planning, maybe upcoming vacancies, retirements, things like that. So we really start with people at any stage. The majority of our clients are kind of in that middle stage where they're not too big, but they're not so small, right? They're probably seven-figure businesses. They probably have a handful of employees or more. They are doing a considerable amount of hiring. They may be looking also at doing acquisitions of other businesses, multiple locations, other states, other specialties as well. And so that's where people start to see, okay, it's getting a little bit busy. And even though I might not have a dedicated HR person, you want to have somebody on hand that you can call when you have a question. You want to have somebody else on the line when, things don't go well, because it always happens, right? And you need somebody else to kind of confirm, because you will have employees who will ask you questions and they'll use big words. And then you're like, oh no, that's worrisome. I'm not sure. Let me go check that out. And so that's where we also are able to help provide, some guidance from there, because it's the same way you would call your lawyer, same way you call your CPA. You might hear something or be confronted with some kind of topic, and you want to go and find out what's the real story.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a real need for that because until I met you, quite frankly, I didn't, it's either you've got an HR department.
Yeah.
I have a friend that's an employment attorney.
Yeah.
And so I'd sometimes bounce things off her.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But if you didn't have that, there's this small to medium sized business that, especially when you're first starting out, you just kind of DIY it.
Yeah.
Because, you're trying to be
cost conscious.
Yeah, right. Budget conscious. You're trying to be, scrappy, but inevitably, and I think you had mentioned it too, it's also about thinking about the culture that you want to create.
Yes.
And the people that you're bringing in. So maybe that's fine, but then somebody comes in and then they see you as the disorganized boss that doesn't know what they're doing. And that's probably not a good place, especially for a new employee starting. How do you think they would feel about that,
Yeah. Same thing goes with contractors. I think many of us have been on that journey where we'll hire contractors because our work is not consistent, right? So maybe we have, when our work increases, then we need additional resources. And so we'll get those people to join us for a period of time, work on a couple things. They work for other people and so forth. And so but nothing really is different about that around expectation setting, cost, what are you going to pay them? What's reasonable? How do they exchange their time for money? How do they get approval to work on certain things? And so it actually, when you're dealing with contractors at the start, it's actually really something I would tell you is even more difficult, because when you have the employment relationship, usually there's a lot more buffer as far as, your oversight, right? Because they work for you on behalf of you. When they're contractors, you have to be even more deliberate and descriptive about what they are or aren't doing, how they're doing that, what they're delivering. And it's not the same way of just, I'm going to pay you for how many hours you worked. Usually it's based on delivery of a project or a service or something very specific. And so that's the other thing I say to folks. And I work exclusively with an employment attorney. I have a couple of them, but also one in particular who, we tag team together, because there's going to be different matters where, you're also a very busy business person and you're like, Susan, I have this issue. You tell me about it. And then if we kind of land in a place where I'm like, that's kind of sticky. Here's my thought, and I'm somebody who's been doing HR for over 25 years. If I'm telling you we think we need to talk to an attorney, right, then I think that's the best thing to do. And then chances are you're like, okay, let's get this fixed, because I don't want to have more problems. And that's part of it too, is I say that we want to make sure that every person that also works for you at whatever point in time, they're also somebody who can speak on behalf of your brand and your organization, your business, what have you,
Mm-hmm.
positively or negatively. And so you're right. You don't want to be the disorganized boss. You don't want to be the person that doesn't give good direction. And the
Mm-hmm.
best way you can do that is kind of be very clear with those expectations, especially up front. And one other thing I would just say is we're going into the new year. So this is the best time. I'm telling a lot of people, look at your contracts, look at your agreements with other people, look at what you're paying folks. This is a good time to look at all of your systems, your processes, and get it all together, get a plan. And that's what we help people do, is really make sure that everything is buttoned up, in good shape, and allows you to focus on what you do best, which is your business.
Yeah. And one of the things that you are doing, I believe you're doing it on Zoom. So it's actually
Mm-hmm.
for anybody that's interested. But
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned the other day, and I kind of had this aha. So I was like, oh, this is fabulous, where you're doing a cohort where you're helping people and leading them through these processes for a 6-month period. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I was really impressed at the work that you were doing on that and how that can help people.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is my People Power Masterclass. It is 6 months long. We meet for 90 minutes every other week for 6 months. We're starting again in January. And I have to tell you, this was something that took me a year. It was a year in the making. And part of what I kept hearing business owners say is that it happened to me the other day when I was at a luncheon. I had a business owner come up to me and she's like, if I could just get rid of my employees, it would all be easier. We say that in a joking way, right? We probably would say that about our bosses sometimes. But, the idea is that folks who are business owners may or may not have their own formal leadership training.
Mm-hmm.
They may or may not know the things that they have in place or don't. I mean, it's just kind of like becoming a parent. There's no like, here's how to be a small business owner. I mean, there's a lot of books out there, yes, but it doesn't tell each person individually the exact manual of how to do everything. So you're kind of learning on the fly, right?
Oh yeah, there's no like framework. If you're going to build, I mean, I'm sure there are, like you said, there's business planning 101, there's all these different things, but there's so much. It's like hard to know, and every business is a little different and
Yes.
nuanced. And every style and how that's all done is a little different and nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate is a different industry than others, but then of course there's parallels that we all face. So
Exactly.
and in our, we just had talked to, and I'm not sure when the episode will launch, but with Alice Ann Loftus, and we were talking about the people part of it and the cyclical parts of the business that we all
Yes.
go through, and the building and burnout and all these different kind of pieces and and phases of the business.
Yes.
So so I think just to
Yeah, we address
validate,
that. Yeah.
what we all kind of go through. And I think that there's power in community and
Yes.
having somebody that can say, hey, we're working through this together and challenges. So sorry to interrupt. I'll let you talk a little bit
absolutely.
more. But
No, I think that builds exactly on the concept, because I kept hearing some of the same things, and I knew I wanted to be able to bring together, a small cohort, small enough where it felt intimate, but large enough where we were able to get different perspectives, right? And the idea is also, I like to have it where we're representing, everyone who's in the cohort represents a different industry, if possible, right? There's not as much overlap, and so far that's been the case. But so it took me a year to really kind of come up with what would that look like, what made the most sense. I did a lot of surveying, a lot of market research, if you will, talked to a lot of people. And then I launched our founding cohort, and, it really helped solidify exactly what I was feeling and seeing, and then got their feedback at 3 different points throughout the cohort to kind of understand what's working. And so where we are today, again, we're going to have another cohort in January starting. We focus on, during those sessions, we first start with what I call a micro learning. So I'm actually taking the beginning of the session to kind of, I'll call it teach, right? So I'm actually taking my HR expertise, and each week we're talking about something different. It might be what to do when someone's not working out, what to do when you are having a difficult situation with someone, and you're trying to understand what other choices are there besides just letting them go. How do you give feedback in a way that can be really coaching instead of just disciplinary? Simple systems that employers needs, right? There's a lot of HR systems out there, and every time I see all these new tools and I get very excited, but not everything is meant for each business, right? Your real estate business and a business in a retail store could be totally different, and there might be some similarities. So each of those 12 sessions starts out with kind of that micro learning, and then we have people in the growth seats, and those growth seats are essentially the folks that get chosen for that week, and they get to bring up anything that is related to the topic, which usually spurs something. Everyone has had some time where they've had somebody who's not working out, or whether or not they need to shift directions in something. And so they bring it, and then we do group coaching. You're essentially able to take a safe space where people are showing up every other week to be in the same place as you, to invest in themselves and their own leadership and their own business. And I think this is the other thing. So many times we're like, okay, I need somebody to help me with my strategy or my sales or my social media. And all of that is great. I have the same. But we don't always invest in ourselves and what we need to be able to see our business more clearly on the people side. Because an effective and strong business comes from within. It's the people who work for you who are facing those other, clients, customers who have you. And if you're not able to be the example, then what can you expect from them? So that's what we do in the masterclass. And when we end, we actually do this thing where I call it let go to grow. And we talk about, what did the experience teach you about yourself? What are some things that you're going to leave behind, and what are you going to take forward with you? Because that experience now has kind of created this confidence in you to also navigate things with much more, again, confidence, because that's also what people need. They need leaders that feel confident in what they're doing. And I call it the calm confidence, right? So even if something's difficult, I want you to feel like, okay, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to go figure it out. And whether that's giving me a call, calling somebody in your cohort, somebody else you trust, the idea is that you get more resources so that you don't feel alone. Because, being a business owner can feel like a lot of weight on your shoulders, a lot of things that you owe a lot of people as well. And, we can't be running it alone. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the building culture aspect of our, it's really, culture is everything, right? It determines if the people want to stay, if the people go. And, it takes a lot of time to recruit and to get the right people on the team. So the last thing you want to do is be a burn and churn business where, you spend all the time getting somebody there, and then you have a lot of people just that continually leave, right? So what you're also talking about is, again, it's kind of setting up the framework and that foundation so that people have more confidence in the business that they're a part of, because people want to know that it feels strong, that it feels secure, that it has the energy and foundation of something that has a lasting quality to it, versus, a hot mess. Like, as a,
I say we don't do messy.
Yeah,
that's what I say.
Messy.
I say we don't do messy. One thing I would tell you too, Kara, is we do executive searches. And when I first started PeopleRise, it wasn't something that I was doing, but actually had a client say, my business, our struggles, our opportunities. I need to hire a CFO or a head of marketing or our head of HR or a marketing, lead. And so we've done a number of searches like that for our clients because we know your business and we can story tell. And what's working really well right now is when we're talking to people in the market. What things are like right now. People are feeling nervous. They're feeling like, they're not sure about, the rising cost of things. There's all sorts of things happening, right? And we're seeing that people are staying put. We're calling it job hugging. So people are hanging on to their jobs because they feel like, okay, whether it's a good job or not, I got to keep this job because I need it. I need to remain employed. That will change just like in the housing market, right? We see
Right.
things where, things are cyclical usually. That will change again. And we're going to have an employee kind of favored market where they're going to be able to call the shots like we saw in COVID, where people were getting huge pay raises and things like that.
Yeah.
I mention this because culture always comes down to the piece where people decide if they want to go or whether they stay. And when you do spend the time to bring them on, and I always say nobody joins a relationship for it to not work out, right? So when you join the employment relationship, you're like, okay, I think this is a good fit. They think they're a good fit and so forth. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay. But the same way that we go about things in the future, there can still be folks who refer business to us. There are still people who say, I loved working there and have an affection for it. But people move on. And so that's also a very big shift from what even our family, our parents' generation was like. It was like you went to one job, you stayed there for a long time.
Yeah.
That's what you did. And, you kind of just stayed quiet and did what you were supposed to do. Nowadays, things are so much different, much more different. And so, again, I think culture is always going to be the piece that people are going to rely on when they're trying to compare opportunities, when they decide whether or not they feel valued, whether it's a place that they want to emulate, and in their own leadership style.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people are more tied to this idea that where they work, they want the work to matter. They want like the values of the company, I think, are sometimes more important than, compensation is of course important, but I think it's important that the values are thread throughout, because I think people are more, that's more important to them now. Is that accurate, or would you say?
You're spot on. Well, and a lot of it came from a couple things. We've seen our parents' generation where we saw for the first time dual households, meaning, both parents working. What do they call them? Latchkey kids, right?
I was the latchkey kid.
Yeah, same. It was the numbers on the garage door, but
I would crawl up we had a we had a trellis, so sometimes we'd forget to bring our key, and so we'd climb up the trellis onto the roof and then go into my brother's window, which was always open. So, or unlocked.
Yeah, because that's how it was. Our parents weren't home from work yet.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my gosh, can I imagine my 8-year-old crawling on the roof?
We would never, no, we would be mortified by this. I know, I have an 11-year-old. And he gets picked up from school and taken to school. This was not how things were when we were growing. You were getting ready on your own and see you later. But, we also watched our parents work really hard. We watched, whether they saved for retirement. We learned a lot of really powerful lessons from our parents' generation around, how they worked really hard and, how did they save or not save for college, for retirement, for the future, what have you. And there were a lot of lessons from there. And what job seekers today realized is more people, number one, don't want to go into leadership and management, because they see I don't want to deal with that. I see what a headache it is. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to do it well, and I'm going to go home, because they also saw how parents' time was taken away. They felt like they weren't as present, and they also saw that it caused a lot of stress. And so that stress that it created for so many people, nowadays folks are like, that's not worth it to me. And given our tech economy, AI, everything else, there's so many different skill sets now that are done remotely with tech. The whole concept of this has changed. And so, yes, how we look at things, how our generation and those coming after us look at culture, what kind of company they want to work for, wanting it to be focused on something of importance is more meaningful. People don't just want to live a life. They want to live a life of meaning. And I think now more than ever, that's what's really clear. How many products can you buy nowadays where you buy one and they give one, right? People are giving those businesses their patronage, right? Based on that. So I think that's here to stay.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I've heard from one of my business coaches in the past too is that, people leave when they run out of future. So one of the things that I think is really powerful about the work that you're doing is helping people build leaders. So even in that cohort, we had talked about even having one of, my ops, my director of operations, really, she's like a COO, her stepping into potentially a cohort like that or role. So it's not only for the leaders, but maybe a second in command that as you see them wanting to develop them as leaders too, within the organization, because, people want to know that what they're doing matters and that they can see a growth plan in place for them.
You're so right. That is the number one reason why when you ask somebody, well, why are you looking for a job or what have you, the answer usually canned is there's no more growth opportunity. But it's really true. More places now, more than ever, that people don't see a future. One, because we don't talk about it because we're too afraid to guarantee. We think when we say something to someone, it's a guarantee. On the flip side, we also don't tell people if we don't feel like they have any more runway. And then we give people a false sense of they think that they're going to get the next promotion, and we don't even have them on the radar screen for a number of reasons. Have we given them the opportunity to get those skills or work on those needs? Both ways. And furthermore, a lot of times what I've told business owners too is I find that it's usually one way or the other. Either the business owner is really big on training and development, they get it, or they're like they're just not bought in. I don't really see anything in the middle. It's either they are or they aren't. And those that are, it's probably obvious, are going to win because what's happening is that those people are also going to give more of their thinking power to problem solving, to dealing with people and other challenges in a more broad way versus, if you're not constantly kind of moving your brain muscles, you're only going to have kind of a one size fits all. You're not going to have too many tools in your toolbox. That's the same thing with this masterclass too. The whole idea is there's a lot of people who've been doing what they're doing for a long time. My goal is to give you some refreshed thinking. My goal is to give you some things that you haven't even thought about. I have had so many people walk away and say, wow, I need to digest this. These are some things I hadn't even thought about, but it seems so obvious. Well, that's what happens when you put people in a room collectively around a topic where everyone can benefit, because again, you learn from each other and from those experiences and the people who are doing those exact things. When we stop, if you think about it, kids, right? We go to school, maybe you go to college, so you go 12 years and then some more. But after that, the workplace is the school. You have to continue to provide learning and development. And actually, adult workers cite their workplace as where they get their number one source of knowledge and information. Not the news, not their friends, not whatever. They're heavily influenced by the information they get from work. And that's really positive for doing good things like, socially and otherwise, giving back, volunteerism, etc. But it also can be one that can be very polarizing depending on the views of the people who lead the business.
Yeah. It's funny, I was talking to my kids. Sometimes, the car is great conversation happens in the car.
Yes.
And it came up about like, well, you're working now, so you don't really have to learn or you don't have to go to school. And I'm like, no.
That's right.
We're always learning. We're always growing, and the idea, I believe as leaders, there's an obligation to continue to learn and grow so that you can be a better steward to your clients and your team, So I love all that you shared, and this has been a fabulous episode. It definitely changed how I, in talking to you, it changed how I viewed HR and the ways that I needed to show up as a leader. So my intention in bringing you on the show too is that it helps maybe someone else listening, that changing their perspective on how they can show up as a better leader or steward for their team, whether it's just one person or whether it's a big team.
Absolutely. Someone's always watching you.
That's right. Yes. So with that being said, what are the ways that people can get to know you better, learn more about you, if they're interested in any of the offerings that you have. Can you share with us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So some of the best ways, Kara, to get in touch with us, you can go to our website, which is PeopleRiseLLC.com. That'll take you to get a time with me on the calendar. It'll also give you a link to our podcast. We've got some exciting things coming up, our Masterclass as well. And we do a program for new leaders. And so we have a number of things there. And it'll also be a great place to kind of learn about our upcoming projects that we have going on. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and Instagram is probably where we do, I think, the most of our social. So if you're someone who likes, some of the fun reels and kind of some of the fun things about, especially this time of year, I like to give my perspective on holidays and in the workplace and those holiday parties. You can find us at PeopleRise LLC.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that you are we're both part of the new book that just launched.
Yes.
That We Lead Volume 3.
Yes, you're chapter 19 and I'm chapter 20.
Oh yes,
that's
we're right next to each other. So shout out to the book that just made. Let's see, it was a
bestseller, starting a business, and then 5, I think, total of 6 categories. Number one Amazon bestseller.
Yeah, which is super exciting.
It is.
And you also had just announced your book that will be coming next spring. Do you want to tell them just the title to give a little teaser?
Absolutely. Thanks. It is called When People Rise, HR Secrets for Small Business Growth, Success, and Legacy. And same publisher, same concept of collaborative stories. And the whole goal of this book is to bring the real stories of leadership and what makes a workplace a magical place to unlock the best in everybody that works for you. And again, adult learners, they want to hear stories. They want to hear, tell me your story. Tell me about the tough times. Tell me about something, the messy middle. Like, what is that? And I want to learn from it. And so that's what we're doing. We're taking those stories, we're putting it in the book. And I think business owners of any size can learn these kind of, micro learnings in their own that they can take back to their business and try out. And just, again, another like little food for thought, little nugget.
Yes. Well, on the podcast, we really focus on how the people that are really in their purpose. Love being on purpose is our tagline for a reason. And so it's clear that you have a gift in what you're bringing to the world. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.